this video is looking at how you can actually test to see if your marriage is savable and whether you should be divorcing or not divorcing. So first thing, this is a very, very tough position for a lot of people to be in. You know, we don't get married to basically get divorced. It takes a lot for people to face that reality, and often it's a real act of courage to face the facts and to realize that perhaps you're in a position that you don't really want to be in. Maybe you're unhappy, maybe it's toxic, maybe it's an abusive situation, maybe it's just you feel like you can't be there anymore. And you want to sort of look to see if the relationship is salvageable or if the relationship is something that needs to be called an end to. So what we do within our approach and within our programs is we are studying and taking a look at certain aspects. So we have a marriage program called Spark. And in our marriage program, it's a journey that couples go on, a journey of education, a journey of training. We develop relationship skills with two people. And by going through this journey and this education, we have saved countless number of marriages and really transformed relationships from people that have come in and are literally, they've already signed divorce papers, they're about to file for the final go, and this is their last shot, and they get back together and recommit and do a new ceremony, all the way through to couples who can feel they're not in a great space. They've lost their spark in their relationship. They're starting to contemplate whether the relationship needs to end. And even people who are on that verge of divorce and they're trying to make that decision. So in the Spark program, this curriculum is very much like a relationship school. You're learning lots of aspects there. And you can check out our Naked Marriage online website to actually see what Spark is all about and what are the components in the curriculum of the program. It's a 5 to 6 month program, so it's not a short fix, because what we found is there's approximately 27 plates that you need to spin at the same time to have a relationship be awesome. So we have to teach those aspects and components to couples so that they can fix the communication, the chemistry, the compatibility, mediating like disputes and issues, and like dealing with the structure and the foundation and context of the relationship. Because we are marriage therapists and we work on this aspect of saving marriages, but we're also experts in divorce and trauma and understanding some of the aspects that can push a relationship over what we call the relationship rift. And once you're over this edge, it's really quite challenging to yank it back. We have developed a mechanism to do an assessment, a kind of a stock take or an analysis of the state of a relationship to work out whether the relationship is too far gone over the rift and it's too difficult to pull it back, or whether there are actually things that you can do to pull the relationship out of the rift and into the fast track again. So when we're analyzing a relationship, we're looking across 8 areas of health within a relationship based on the components of Spark, based on our learnings from the divorce program. Commitment is one of the first aspects. Looking at how committed are the couple to each other. A lot of couples that I work with on the marriage side, for me what's really sad is they're not a team. They are not actually living like a couple. They're living like 2 separate people that are living very, very separate lives. And that is an indication that commitment is kind of not there. They've already in that state where they've got one foot out of the relationship. And it's kind of looking at the aspects, to what extent have you got one foot out of the relationship and to what extent are you actually committed and in the relationship. The next area of health that we look at is the system, the structure of the relationship. A lot of what we find when we're doing analysis is inequality. One person is doing tons of stuff, the other person does nothing. So there's some really interesting ways that parenting are happening, or engagement in chores and just actually running of a household, or you know, the balance of power in terms of money, or the management of money, or balance of power in terms of like who makes decisions and you know, who controls things, and who gets the most needs met in the relationship and who gets no needs met in the relationship. So when we see this kind of these differences, these power balances, and systems that lack inequality, that is another aspect that we really study when we're looking at the health of a relationship. Another aspect that we look at is compatibility. And here there are many measures that we use from a personality differences perspective, individual differences perspective, but also some of the science of compatibility, either from Big Five personality tests, Gottman process, and a couple of other things that we have in the mix there. But looking at studies done on longevity of relationship and checking to see how compatible are you. What we find is that people shortcut due diligence when they get into a relationship in the first place, and they base their criteria for selecting their partner based on earnings, or cultural background, or politics, or religion, and actually find that they don't actually have a lot else in common with the person. So they could be the same religion, the same culture, the same background, but they are completely polar opposite in every other way. And therefore, that polar oppositeness starts to become a problem. And what's interesting is people can kind of keep up a pretense and keep up a vibe for about 6 or 7 years, which is why we have that kind of 7-year itch concept that a lot of us are aware of. After about 7 years, you kind of run out of steam and you just settle into who you are. So compatibility actually becomes a real important predictor for longevity in a relationship. And being fundamentally incompatible with your partner, not sharing the same values and ideas and character traits, it could really spell an issue if you don't have really amazing communication skills. So another aspect of course, leading on to communication skills. Are you good at communicating with each other? Are you good at solving arguments? Are you good at figuring out how to deal with a dispute or how to get your point across? Does your partner listen well? Are they attuned to you, or are they just focused on getting their own needs met? Do you take strong positions in discussions and arguments? Like, are you actually so positional that neither of you are really attuned to each other? You're just more focused on getting your own needs met. These are some of the things and patterns that we see. We also see patterns like one person is very literal, another one is very figurative. We see patterns around extroversion or introversion. We see patterns around one person being the pursuer, another person being the distancer, and this can really influence communication. Also how you present from agreeableness perspective, politeness perspective, assertiveness perspective. If these things are different, your communication is really going to suffer and be affected. Another area of health that we look at is understanding yourself. Like, how well do you know who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, how you tick? And how well, which is another aspect, is how well do you understand your partner? And how are you very dispositional of like, this is the way it should be, and they're wrong because they're not like this? Or can we see, this is who I am, and these are my values and my protocols and views of life, and this is who they are, and they are different. And they see the world from a different perspective, and I actually really respect their differences and therefore can communicate in a respectful fashion with that person. If you don't understand yourself and you don't understand your partner and cannot see that these differences are part of what makes us human, you will see suffering in compatibility, you will see suffering and challenges in the communication realm because those differences are not well understood or respected. Seventh aspect is history. So have you had or navigated trauma together as a couple? Have you gone through some really hardcore things where perhaps you haven't processed and cleared that up with each other? Have you dealt with infidelity or financial issues, or have you had something terrible happen from a health perspective to yourself or one of your kids? Or has something happened in your relationship where you didn't navigate that well together? And is that now sitting as a stone in your shoe or an elephant in the room that nobody's talking about? And is that actually creating that disconnection between the two of you? And then the final aspect is chemistry. And chemistry, not just from a kind of courtship perspective and, having that emotional intimacy and intellectual intimacy, but also physical intimacy. Are you in a sexless marriage? Are you in a marriage that you have no affection at all, and for both parties or for one of the parties, that's a really painful position to be in. And what's interesting is, although we study love languages, there's actually an order that love languages need to be followed to restore and rebuild connection between two people that have lost that ability to connect with each other. So when we're assessing relations, we look across these 8 areas of health, and we basically come up with a kind of score. And it then either gives people a clear understanding of how far their relationship has moved over into the rift, or are there things that they can do to pull themselves back out of that and actually using our educational system, learn the skills and the techniques that they need to save their marriage. So if you're in that position where you're not sure, you're deciding whether you should divorce or not, you're in a bit of a swirl, you don't know if you should save your marriage or cut and run, book an assessment. Book an assessment or have a call with us so we can actually test and look at the health of your relationship and give you an expert opinion as to whether your relationship is savable based on our experience. And if you want that, you can book a clarity call on our website and we can tell you more about how to get on with that. So I hope that helps. Take care.